I am an architect. Today I sketched the preliminary plans for a large country house, which will be erected in one of the most beautiful residential districts in the world. Sometimes I have dreamed of living there. I could afford such a home. But this evening, leaving my office, I returned to my own small, inexpensive home in an unrestricted, comparatively undesirable section of Los Angeles. Because I am a Negro.
My grandfather, Paul Williams, was born in 1894 in Los Angeles. His parents had a fruit stand. They both died when he was at the age of 4, so he became a foster child at a very young age. He was pretty much discouraged from going into architecture, primarily because most of the adults around him advised him that he couldn't make a career in architecture being an African American. But that didn't dissuade him. He went on to USC and on to other design schools.
In the 1930s, there was intense segregation, even in California.
Being an African-American architect in a predominantly white male-driven profession was an enormous challenge. That was years before Jackie Robinson ever stepped on a baseball field.
A lot of the neighborhoods he designed in, he couldn't live in. A lot of the hotels that he designed in, he couldn't stay in.
In this house, in Los Feliz area, in 1927, there were racially restrictive covenants. That means African Americans could not buy homes in this area. Yet he was good enough to design the home.
Because of the protocols of the time, shall we say, it wasn't proper for a man of color to sit next to a white person. And so he had to learn to draw upside down.
For him to be able to do that had to have taken an incredible amount of strength and courage, and he did it with grace. I'm not so sure I would have been able to do that. The fact that he never faltered and never gave up is a true testament to his character.
He didn't let other people discourage him. He didn't let other people define who he was and what his skills were.
He believed in the power of doing things well and with great attention to detail. And he was able, by the sheer genius of his work, to attract clients. And I think his story could only have been possible here in Los Angeles. Many of his clients were also like him. They didn't come from wealth. Lucille Ball was an actress. She didn't come from a wealthy family. Her husband, Desi, was Cuban. Hollywood was kind of a new industry. It's building up. They're not encumbered by the establishment of wealth, and they wanted to do creative architecture.
It's always a treat showing Paul Williams houses. The more you see, the more you really understand his genius. This is the Paley Estate. Paley was the founder of CBS Radio. It's probably the most exquisite, pure Paul Williams house that he ever designed. This is probably the most beautiful Art Deco 1930s tile pool that I've ever seen. As realtors, we're always talking about the legacy of Paul Williams. Whenever there's a Paul Williams that comes on the market, it's the first property that people must see. You know if it's Paul Williams, it's going to be very, very desirable.
Paul Williams had an impact, obviously, on the landscape of Los Angeles and the streetscape, and many things that are iconic in Los Angeles. The Beverly Hills Hotel, the Polo Lounge, the theme towers at LAX.
Paul Williams' career spanned a long period of time. And in that period of time, there were a lot of different architectural styles that were fashionable. And he was always on the leading edge of what the architectural fashion of the period was.
Paul Williams is able to create excellence through all building types, from big mansions to modest homes to hotels.
He did architecture in a way that's not done today. An architect then would design everything. He designed the furniture, the casework, the cabinets, everything about the home.
There's a detail that Paul had that had an elegance to it. There was a lightness to it, and we study that a lot. He was the master of it. I don't think there's been anybody better than Paul Williams as an architect and as a designer.
This is the Paul Williams home. It was built in 1927. It's a Spanish colonial revival style. Whenever someone comes in, their mouth is agape. There are audible gasps. when they look out at the views. People driving by will stop and just look at the house because it commands your eye. I just feel very privileged to own a Paul Williams home.
Paul Williams' career was exemplary in a lot of ways, as a leader, as an architect, as a policymaker.
Paul Williams was a role model, a trailblazer, and a man of many firsts.
My grandfather was the first African-American member of the AIA in 1923. He was the first African-American fellow of the AIA in 1957. And this year, in 2017, he's going to be the first African-American to receive the AIA Gold Medal of Honor.
I think his true legacy is that he taught others to dream. He laid a foundation and blazed a path.
Many architects worked for him and then went off and started their own practices, and they knew that they could because they saw that he did. And that made a huge difference.
Without knowing about Paul Williams, my father would probably not have become an architect. It's the 1930s. He's in high school. He's African American. The odds of him meeting an African American architect, let alone aspiring to that as a career, was pretty slim. But one of his teachers said, "There's an architect in LA named Paul Williams." And that literally changed my father's world.
Paul Williams' example is still necessary today because we still have quite a large gap in the racial demographics of our profession. There are 0.3% female African American architects in this country. And so there's a real imperative, I think, to change that.
The world is really disturbed at this moment by cultural prejudice, by religious difference, but I think Paul's work and his career and his life is a reminder for all of us when we look beyond those boundaries, how beautiful the world can be. I believe design has that power to break the barriers of all human difference and really connect people.
This is my grandfather's house. This room is a family room. This is a room where we spent most of our time, and the doors open up onto the outdoor patio. My grandfather's a real family guy, so we spent a lot of time here socializing, spending the weekend with my grandparents. He always had time for family. He was always around. And when he was around, he was there. You know, he wasn't thinking about his next design. He was thinking about you. So that's who my grandfather was to me.
We are honored to recognize Paul Williams as our distinguished alumnus for 2017.
My grandfather would feel very honored to get the award from USC. USC held a special place in his heart.
As a trustee, I think it's important that USC honors him, not only because of the body of work that he's done, but because Paul's an inspiration to students on so many different levels. We need more people like Paul Williams in the world.
This is an alumnus that has contributed greatly to his profession and symbolizes everything that we feel that a Trojan exemplifies.
Paul Williams is a great American, not just a great African American, but a great American and a great architect.